All right. Just give you guys a few seconds here before we get started at the shindig. Just making sure everything's all right and whatnot. I apologize for the screen right now because the brother is not webcam ready. But just bear with us for a moment. Okay, I think we can go ahead and do this. So, let's go ahead and put the camera on me. Cool. Alright, so let's do this. Today's date is May 25th, 2019, and this is how the frack we got here. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, on how the frack we got here. We do take last week's events and honestly try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, I do have to sit there and say that this is an adult podcast, which means language not suitable probably for children and things of graphic nature may be shown, so viewer discretion is advised. For everybody else, welcome. So this week, well, let's just go ahead and call it what it is. This week is kind of like the previous other weeks go. It just seems to get worse. And honestly, the best way to start this is to actually look at police and basically how they're treating black people this week. And seems to be more of the same.
On his property, for picking up trash. That's what you're gonna do, officer?
I couldn't help but notice you're sitting on the patio behind this building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's signs for no trespassing, private property, that kind of thing. Yeah, I wasn't sure what you were doing, if you lived here or you worked here.
Yeah,
it looks like you're working, doing something, picking stuff up.
I work here.
Okay, gotcha. What's the actual address then?
3333 Arapahoe.
Okay, what unit are you in?
I don't think I have to actually tell you that.
Well, I'm just checking to make sure that you have a right to be here, that's all.
I just told you I lived here.
Okay.
And I told you that I'm working as well.
Okay.
So shouldn't that be enough for you?
Well, I gotta verify it, just so I know that you do in fact live
Are you
here.
kidding me?
Just making sure you belong here, and if you do, then great, and I'll be on my way.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have anything with your address on it?
Yo, look, man. Here,
Hey,
why don't you follow
Just
me
relax.
and I'll just fucking beep the building, dude.
Just chill out, man.
Dude, this is ridiculous.
I just need to verify who you are, that you belong here, that you have a right to be here, okay?
Are you kidding me, man?
Can you have a seat, please?
No.
Mr. Atkinson.
No, I'm not.
290 Cook 12. Can you please have a seat?
No.
Put that down. Stop. Mr. Atkinson, right now you're obstructing a police officer, which is a jailable offense. I'm asking you one more time to sit down.
I'm not doing anything wrong. And you're not going to arrest me. You're not going to do anything. Because I live here. And I didn't do anything wrong.
Last chance, sir.
Well, what?
Have a seat.
Well, what?
Sit
you're
down.
Gonna arrest
Right now I'm
person?
detaining you
Arrest
and
someone?
investigating you for a trespass.
I fucking live here, dumbass.
Sit down.
You're gonna tase me outside of my residence? I hope that
Drop
thing's
that.
on.
Put that down.
I hope the camera's on, sir.
Put that down.
I really do. No, I'm working.
You need to
I live
listen to
here.
what I'm telling you
have
to do
my
right now.
address. I'm not doing anything illegal.
290, we're on
I haven't
the
done anything
east
wrong,
side of
so I'm not gonna
2333
listen to you.
Folsom.
I don't
Subject's
know you.
failing to comply,
You're actually
not
on my
sitting down,
property,
and he
I
has
feel
some
unsafe.
kind of a what I'm just going to follow until my cover gets here. Sit down. Now.
Why?
Now. Do it now.
Why?
I'm detaining you to investigate.
For
Investigated
what?
trespass.
I live here.
Sit down.
No, I'm not sitting down.
Then you're probably going to get tased in a second.
Why?
Because you have a weapon. Put that
I
down.
have a weapon?
Put it down and comply with my orders,
You
please.
think that you could tase me? I'm freaking picking up trash on my property,
I need to confirm
which
it.
is where I live.
There's a sign.
I'm not doing anything illegal, and you're not gonna fucking tase me, officer. So
Sit
how do
down.
you think about that? Here,
You have a
let me
dangerous
see.
object in your hand
I
and you're
have a
failing to put it
dangerous
down.
object. I'm picking up trash.
Put it down.
You're gonna
You're
shoot
being
me.
detained.
You're
I
the
feel
fucking
threatened
gun.
because you're not
That's a
putting that
gun.
down. Yes, it is.
I'm picking up trash.
Put it down. If you use that weapon against me,
A weapon.
then yes, that is a
I'm 20 feet
consideration.
from you. I'm minding my
All you have to do
business.
is comply right
Everything-
now.
I don't have a weapon.
That's a weapon.
This is a bucket.
No, that's a weapon. Right
This
there.
is a clamper for picking up garbage, sir.
Put it down. I'm telling you, I'm threatened
It's
by
not
it.
a weapon. You're not threatened. I'm threatened. You have a fucking gun that kills people. How am I supposed to kill someone with
Sit
this?
down, sir.
I don't feel like having how many strangers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 officers of the law with guns drawn on my property. I'm picking up trash for my job. And you guys came onto my property, right, with suspicion of bullshit fucking accusations. Right? I don't know what the fuck you guys are even here for. You haven't even told me what your purpose is.
You didn't give me a chance.
You haven't told me what your fucking purpose is, sir.
I'd be happy to if you could just have a seat.
I don't want to know anymore.
Okay.
What I want right now is I want my identification. Why are you coming onto my property asking me for my information? This is where I fucking live. I don't need to give you shit. I didn't do shit. I fucking live here.
That is information in terms of his name and all that?
I just have his name.
Okay. Then give him his
You're a
ID back
fucking
and then we're out of
jackass.
here. Yeah, because we
You're a
already confirmed he's
jackass.
there and
You
this
got the
gentleman
wrong
here just
fucking
said, yeah,
person.
he works here and lives.
This could have got me killed today, apparently. Why don't you guys go do some real work? Some real police work.
So yeah, best way to look about that is apparently another black guy is simply doing his job, and really the cop itself just really getting to a point of, there comes a point of suspicion, because I understand cops like to throw around the word probable cause. They like to throw around the word probable cause a lot. They'll sit there and say, well, this gentleman was doing this, so therefore I'm investigating. However, in this case, if the man is picking up trash outside of a building, it's a little difficult to defend anything. Now, I'm not saying I'm defending cops, but I'm just saying from that standpoint, if I was his superior, if I was his CO, I would be looking at that like, so what reason did you have to go bother this man? I mean, did he look like he was dangerous? Did he look like he was out of his element? Or do you just want to go ahead and skip to the point where he said, well, he's black, he's picking up trash, he obviously must be up to something? Because there's no way to defend that. At the same time, the man gives a proper example of what I like to say is this. There are some cops, I don't say all, but there's a good number of cops out there that literally depend on your ignorance of the law. And I don't mean ignorance as in you're stupid. I mean the simple fact of the matter is that a lot of people don't know their rights. Where, you know, because I'll put it this way, a cop does not just use, I mean, some cops will sit there and use the law as they see fit to intimidate and pretty much scare you. Now, from someone that's been harassed by cops, I can tell you, and honestly, Thurgood Marshall said it best, the law can be a weapon if you use it. And the only thing I would say of that situation, in that particular situation, is the simple fact of the matter is, wherever you live at, know your laws. If you don't know, the beauty of the internet, or the beauty of your local library, every city has laws on paper. Learn them, because you know why? Because they will make the big ass difference in how a cop will treat you. Because I'll be honest with you, if a cop knows that you know what they can and can't do, then trust me, that alone is defense. Like in that man's case, he knew. In the man's case, he just simply said, look, he complied to a certain point. He sat there and the man asked for his ID. He gave him his ID. He then asked, well, do you have something with your address on it? Why? Why do you need it? I just showed you my ID. I identified who I was. He even sat there and said, dude, we'll go up to the building and I'll buzz and I can buzz myself in. It's not that hard to prove. And the thing about that is, you know, I understand Good Samaritans exist, but what Good Samaritan is going to clean up a building that they don't live at? At the same time, this cop just simply could have just sat there and been like, okay, just want to make sure, sorry to bother you. But there are a lot of cops out there who have that guy's mentality. If they'll see a black guy doing anything that they believe is suspicious, they will go up to him and pretty much just harass him. Now there's a point, like I said, the black man knew the law because he complied up until where he didn't have to comply. Because you can tell that because the simple fact of the matter is that he sat there and said, why do I need to show you anything? What are you bothering me for? And the cop never said it. The cop literally wanted him to comply first and then explain, when he could have just sat there and explained and then go from there. And the simple fact of the matter is, the reason why he didn't is because he thought he could just do it because he has a badge. And that alone is effing scary. That is the mentality of a lot of law enforcement officers out there, who will just simply believe that because they have the badge and they have backup and they have guns and they have everything else on their side, including the Justice Department, who rarely prosecutes cops the proper way in shootings, that they could do whatever the fuck they want. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but in that simple case, it didn't even have to go that far. That officer just sat there and apologized and moved on, and now you pretty much are still fulfilling that stigma that we all believe, and yet law enforcement can't figure out why people of color, such as myself, will never trust cops. But at the same time, I implore you, I really do encourage you, if you don't know the laws in your city or state, when it comes to what cops can and can't do yourself a big favor and learn that. Because I'm going to tell you why. An officer always has to tell you why they pulled you over first. An officer always has to tell you why they're investigating first. They always have to tell you whatever reason they're coming up to you, but they always have to do it first. Reason being because that is their procedure. They can't just roll up on you and say you're under arrest. They have to tell you why. And then from there, they have to give you the chance to comply, which, as you can see, the man, understandably frustrated and angry, can understand why he acted like that. Because if I'm at work and some cop rolls up on me and I'm simply trying to do my job, he won't leave me alone, I can understand why he's aggravated. I really can. But then again, not surprised by cop behavior, especially when you see this next story.
This is the video capturing the last 30 seconds of Pamela Turner's life.
I'm walking. I'm actually walking to my house.
An officer was trying to arrest Turner, who police say had outstanding warrants. Only when he approached, she resisted.
You actually arrested me.
That pop, the police taser. The shock apparently sending Turner to the ground. You can hear her asking why. A struggle follows. The officer appears to be trying to handcuff Turner when she claims she's pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
That's when police say Turner grabbed the taser and used it on the officer, which police say forced him to open fire. 5 shots, killing Turner at the scene.
Just heard the gunshots, and then all of a sudden I heard the ambulance.
Police today saying Turner was not pregnant as she had claimed.
She's not a bad person. She didn't hurt nobody.
The officer, now on a 3-day paid leave, has not been identified. The department is investigating and standing behind the 11-year veteran.
These are things that kind of force the officers to take action for their own safety. It's unfortunate, but looks like it's necessary.
Tonight, Turner's family staying quiet, only telling NBC News they've hired an attorney as they now mourn the loss of a sister and friend. Morgan Chesky, NBC News.
So again, I say again in this situation because, like I said, people of color and minorities' interactions with law enforcement never really do end on a peaceful note. Now, understand in the story of this woman, she did have warrants. However, correct me if I'm wrong here for all those law enforcement folks that do watch my podcast. A man going to arrest a female suspect. Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't they need a female law enforcement officer to make the arrest? At least that's my understanding of it. Just because they need to have need to have a woman arrest her just to make sure everything's by the book. It's supposedly. So I don't get, number one, she did have warrants. So let me stress that heavily. She did have warrants. Understandable. However, one cop goes to arrest her when, again, she resists arrest. Okay. He used a taser. Not sure why. I mean, don't get me wrong. Looking at the video from a distance, it looks like the officer's got maybe 100 pounds on her. Now, I'm not saying it's accurate. I'm just saying the woman, and I'm not saying women aren't strong. I'm not saying women aren't agile. I'm just saying that I question the use of the taser. Because to me, using the taser means that you're trying to go non-lethal. When, I guess using tactics of just getting them down or putting them, or, getting their arms behind their back, or even using mace. Mace would probably be a go-to more than tasers. However, he used a taser. Apparently, she got the taser away from him and used it on him. So again, this is the part where it's like it feels like the same old story is being told again. The officer pulls his gun, fires 5 times. I'm still trying to understand how is his life in danger at that point, because she took the taser from you and used it on you. You decide to pull your gun and just fire 5 times. That's the thing that I don't. That's the thing I don't get. See, that's where I'm saying this is where a lot of law enforcement's mentality goes. If they can't subdue you, they immediately go for kills. Because and yeah, the cop got 3 day paid leave. We already know that. There's no point in saying. I'll be surprised the one time when a cop shoots a person of color that they don't get on an administrative paid leave. They always do. So I'm not surprised about that. However, it is hard because if I'm investigating the shoot, whether it's justified or unjustified, how in the world can we say that's justified? Because if I'm internal affairs that's actually going to be looking at the cop's actions, I'm going to go ahead and ask them, did you really think that this woman was so much of a threat that you decided to go ahead and use deadly force and execute with extreme prejudice? Because the only thing I can think of is why? What about her that immediately screamed, go for the gun? I mean, you couldn't even get her down. You didn't wait for backup. You didn't wait for additional officers. You decided to go ahead and take this woman down yourself. There has to be some policy and procedure in this, because I'm not defending the woman to an extent, because like I said, if you got warrants, cops will eventually come after you. There's no way to defend that. However, I am defending the woman that she didn't have to lose her life after a warrant being served, especially by a cop who felt a little overconfident, and then when he got knocked off his high horse, he decided to shoot the woman, because it went from arrest in my mind to murder, because that's the only way you can justify it. He murdered the woman, and he's about to now get a vacation for it. And the reason why I'm bringing up all these stories, because we've always heard the situations, especially myself and many others, have sat there and said it best. If you're white, you get taken in alive. If you're black, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be killed. And people say, well, that's just simply not true. Well, I present to you Exhibit A.
Alabama.
It was a possible domestic disturbance at that residence, and when they responded, they were met with gunfire.
One officer dead, 2 wounded. A manhunt now underway for this man, 29-year-old Grady Wayne Wilkes.
This individual who's done this terrible thing that we are looking for aggressively.
According to police, officers responding to an overnight domestic disturbance call in the town of Auburn were met with gunfire from the heavily armed suspect.
He's got an AR, he's wearing a helmet, he's got body armor.
The drama and danger playing out on police radio.
I'm hit. Lost my weapon. Unit on scene, get my weapon. I'm coming, I have a tourniquet, I have a trauma pack as well.
The 2 wounded officers are being treated in area hospitals.
One of them will be released. The other one is expected to recover.
The suspect is described as a white man, 6 feet 4 inches tall and 215 pounds. Police say he fled the scene wearing shorts and body armor. He is considered armed and dangerous and is now the subject of a full-scale manhunt.
Now, the reason why I bring that up, because that is a later story. It was updated. The man, Grady, was brought in peacefully and alive. Keep in mind, this man killed 1 cop, wounded 2 others, body armor, extremely dangerous, fully armed, and was brought in alive. How can you make this story up? Because Dylan Roof, everybody remembers him, shot nine black people in a church, brought in alive. The shooter in Las Vegas, brought in alive. And this is the argument that I make. You show me in each of those scenarios where a white man who has access to ammo, armor, munitions, and maybe a little bit of training, why is it that the cops feel priority of life is to bring in this individual, but yet every other person of color immediately gets executed. And this the argument I bring toward law enforcement and to all those that defend Blue Lives Matter and that bullshit. You can't sit there and tell me that there is a track record of this. They will save white lives, but everybody else pretty much gets the one time. And and this is the thing that just annoys me more about that. The thing that annoys me more is just that when individuals try to make that defense, you show me one case where a black person wasn't arrested and it didn't lead to his death. Because I'm going to be quite honest with you, your track record right now is not looking good in that scenario. But before I do eventually get away from police, this one story that I did find very interesting was that the police chief in San Francisco wants to basically call for an internal probe of his own force because a reporter's house was raided. And he literally, and this is the thing where I found it shocking, is that a police chief wants to conduct an internal investigation because he kind of believes that his own house might be a little corrupt. And a lot of us are sitting there going, duh. I mean, it's the police. Corruption is going to be found everywhere. Corruption is like mildew. You can find mildew if you know where to look. But at the same time, we're not surprised that, and I have to give it to him. I mean, at least he's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to sit there and say, look, my house, there's something going on in my house. I need outside investigations. Now, will this change anything? I mean, one can be hopeful, but one also has to be realistic. That I think the simple fact of the matter is just that he might do this for lip service. He might do this for political views. He might do this for public points. I could argue either way of that. But I just found it interesting that a person especially a police officer, would turn around and, basically want to make sure he's got a clean house. But beyond that, basically, let's get to President Cheeto. So President Cheeto did something that's probably going to piss a lot of people off, and the funny part is, it's not being talked about a lot.
I have a bullet in my leg and several shrapnel wounds.
Okay. You have a slight accent, but you have a... Very good.
I haven't spoken English with native speakers in several months. I've been speaking Arabic. Well done.
Walker chose to fight on the front lines with America's enemies. Terrorists didn't compel John Walker to join with them. John Walker chose terrorists.
American citizen, right?
Yeah.
Well, right now you are a prisoner.
All right.
It's been 2 years since I last saw my son. It was wonderful to see him this morning. My love for him is unconditional and absolute.
About jihad. And I'm just wondering, just personally, because I've been on jihad in Chechnya and southern Philippines, I'm just curious, was this what you thought it would be? Was this the right cause or the right place?
Exactly what I thought it would be.
I wish I could make that up. John Walker Lindh, you guys remember him, the American Taliban, aside from the Republican Party, which is the American Taliban. But anyway, that man is about to be released from prison. Keep in mind, and I point this out, this is why I say the most dangerous person in the U.S. is a Caucasian white male, because he basically went overseas, studied Arabic, studied Yemen, joined a radical Islamic group, joined the Taliban, vowed to fight against the very same country he was born in. Gets in, and the thing that kills me about this, usually, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't traitors supposed to be executed? I mean, aren't they supposed to be? Because this man got 20 years in prison. And now, after serving almost 17 years, he's about to be on parole and released from prison. I don't know about you, but I mean, I shouldn't be surprised because he's a white male. But at the same time, it is infuriating because it is amazing how very little press that's getting. That he is basically about to walk, in a sense, because he's about to be released from prison. But at the same time, he fought against us on the enemy side. If he was black, I guarantee he would have been killed on sight. But it amazes me so that not only is that getting very little talk, that's not getting talked about as much, at the very same sense the matter of fact is that we are literally ignoring the fact that the American terrorist is pretty much a Caucasian male, and simply put, they are getting away with murder on all left and rights. But it did tick me off because I'm like, how are you not dead? Because the last time I checked, treason usually means they off your ass. But apparently he got jailed, in which he's now about to get out. And it just amazed me so that yet we talk about some fact about going against these people who do harm, and yet we're letting one go. That's America for you. But moving right along, so let's get to President Cheeto. So President Cheeto has had a rather busy week. We'll start with this one.
Oval Office at a meeting on Thursday that the president stated his demands. He didn't like the design of the wall's gates, the Washington Post reported. They should be manually operated French doors instead. And the president repeatedly urged, according to the Post, that a specific company be given contracts by the Pentagon and Army Corps of Engineers that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
I don't think anyone can build it the quality that we can build in the time that we can build it in.
That company, Fisher Industries, is run by Tommy Fisher, a Republican donor who has appeared on Fox News.
We're here to do exactly what we came to, is deliver border security for every single American, and we can prove it works.
The president may have noticed, talking about Fisher on his favorite network, seemingly attracted to the company by their assurances of being cheaper and faster.
I don't know if you heard about this contractor that said he can build the whole wall for a lot cheaper than anybody else and get it done by 2020. Are you aware of that?
Yes, we're dealing with him, actually. It's Fisher. Comes from North Dakota, recommended strongly by a great new senator, as you know, Kevin Cramer.
North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer took Fisher to this year's State of the Union. Fisher and his wife had donated more than $10,000 to Cramer's Senate campaign. In an interview with the Post, Cramer says that Trump always brings them up, noting that he's talked to the president twice about Fisher, including yesterday. The Army Corps of Engineers has passed over Fisher's bid for one part of the wall because it didn't meet the operational requirements, an Army official told the Post. But they are still in the mix for other parts of the $5 billion in contracts for the wall. To make their case, this week, Fisher said he's using private donations to build a small section of the wall in New Mexico to show off supposedly superior construction techniques.
We'll prove it in a half-mile stretch where they said they couldn't be built.
That they were already worried was a trap. Does President Donald Trump actually want to be?
Oop, sorry guys. A little slow on the ball. I apologize. So, in this usual case of follow the money, well, again, Trump says that we should have French doors on a border wall. On top of that, he suggested a specific company be given the contract because they were offered through a senator who basically gave to Trump via this individual who now owns this company that wants to build the wall. How can we not say conflicting interest here? You have a person that's literally sitting there saying, I can build a wall faster and cheaper. He goes to Fox News, Trump's favorite station, because they never talk bad about him. And then he turns around and then he says, we should award him the contract. If this is an individual that doesn't know how bidding works, then I don't know what does. But then again, Trump is a con man. Really shouldn't be surprised about that. And the simple fact of the matter is that's not the only part of the story I did want to show. The other part is that thank you God we have judges that actually are not on Trump's payroll. What I mean by is a few podcasts ago I did sit there and say the Department of Defense did actually split off funding to actually fund Trump's border wall under a certain ruling. Thankfully, a judge in the higher court of appeals has actually blocked that from happening. So at least for now, Trump won't be able to get that $2.8 billion that the Department of Defense was setting aside from that. So it looks like a lot of this stuff, much like in Trump's usual life, is going to be wound up eating courts. So again, it just makes no sense to me because, when I see Democrats, and like I said, I don't consider myself a Democrat. I do agree with some of their politics. I will never see myself as a Republican because honestly, they're against women and minorities. And you can tell that because there's nothing but a whole bunch of old white men. But at the same time, how many times are we gonna keep seeing an individual who has conflicts of interest, and you can tell that because of everybody he introduces? That alone should tell you that something is up. That alone should tell you that, okay, maybe we need to start really investigating. Democrats, honestly, what the fuck are you waiting for? It amazes me so well, we don't want to be divisive. Okay, you have the Barr report, because I refuse to call it the Mueller report because Barr is sitting on the unredacted Mueller report. So even with the Barr report, which I've read, that alone is a walking guideline to obstruction of justice. And the reason, which a lot of people aren't saying, that Mueller didn't actually sit there and implicate Trump is because the stupid ideal, and I say stupid, because the Justice Department's ideal is not to basically indict a sitting president. Let me explain that. That's not law. That is their point of view. Now, if feet push the fire, you can indict a sitting president. It can be done. But I hate the fact that the Department of Justice sits there and says, well, a sitting president can't be indicted. No, that is their thought process. It's not ultimately law. But we have a report, even though it's heavily redacted, still has a lot of smoke there that Democrats should be using forward, but they won't. And I don't understand why. You can sit there and say it's divisive, but here's the problem with Democrats, and this is what I'm going to go ahead and say. And, if you're a Democrat, disagree with me or agree with me or not. Here's the one thing that Republicans get right that Democrats don't. Republicans band together. Even if it's an idiotic idea, they will still support each other. Democrats, when they get power, I don't know what it is, but it's just like you guys get so dismissive that really it doesn't need to. It's almost to the point of just why? I mean, I had to literally sit there and go, how in the blue proverbial hell that you can be dismissive on something that honestly should be a slam dunk? It should be. It shouldn't even be a question. But you're going to have those individuals out there who are sick of that say, well, impeachment's not the right time, or we shouldn't do it, or we should wait till the election. Here's the problem. America honestly cannot wait until the 2020 election to get shit done. If you're going to impeach him, do it. If you don't, then let it go, and then we'll see. For some fact of the matter is that you were brought in on the promise of basically going after this guy, and you don't. And so therefore we can get you out and get in people who are going to really truly represent us. That's my thing on it. But that's not the only thing, because also President Cheeto, because I thought that, man, nobody's going to sit there and run against him for the 2020 election. Actually, somebody is, and I really didn't know it until yesterday.
Though, including one in his own party, for the party's nomination in 2020, we caught up with former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld, who is running a campaign against the president for 2020 just a short time ago, to ask him about the report and whether he thinks impeachment should still be on the table. Take a listen. You are one of the only Republicans so far directly challenging the president in the 2020 campaign. How much will this report by Robert Mueller factor into your case to the party for the nomination?
Well, I must say, when we finally got to read the report, I was horrified by it. Despite the conclusion of no conspiracy with the Russians, there's a whole lot in there about obstruction of justice, all of Volume 2 of the 2-volume report. And it's rough stuff. He's telling senior intelligence officials to lie. He's telling senior national security people to lie. He's telling his own legal counsel to lie. Fortunately, they said, we can't say that, Mr. President. He says, why not? They say, because it's not true. He says, he hadn't thought of that. It's kind of like a so what answer.
In light of everything Mueller said in the report, do you think impeachment should still be on the table?
I really don't think so. And I'll tell you why. It's not for legal reasons. It's for political reasons. Because the House could easily, there's more than enough evidence, much more than there was against President Nixon, and I worked on that case for obstruction. But, the Republicans control the Senate, so it's very unlikely that he would ever be convicted in the Senate, where you need a 2/3 vote. So the upshot of, 15 months of impeachment proceedings might be that the House looks like overzealous prosecutors and the president comes out smelling like a rose. So I can understand why Steny Hoyer said impeachment's not a good idea for political reasons.
Governor, setting aside the behavior of the president and his campaign, the report obviously documents so much in so much detail how the Russians interfered with our election. If you had been president back in 2016, of course, Barack Obama was in the White House, would you have considered early indications from the intelligence community about what the Russians were doing? Would you have considered that an act of war?
I don't know about war, but cybersecurity is serious business, and the Chinese and the Russians and the Koreans are absolutely at our throats there. And, what all the pros say is you got to figure out how to make it more painful for them to attack you and hack you than it is what they get from it. And that's highly technical. But, these countries are throwing everything they have at each other, both on offense and defense.
And what would you do differently if you were in the White House and you win your party's nomination in 2020 to make sure that we are secure against those threats?
Well, for one thing, I might listen to my national intelligence community every once in a while, national security and intelligence. I've talked to senior military people who brief the president. They say it is terrifying to brief the president because after 2 minutes, it's like a light goes off in his head and he can't focus and follow you any longer. This is a guy without a long attention span and unfortunately not much curiosity about the world and how it works. I really do think the president's so wrapped up in his own head that he will tune out externality. He doesn't really know when the lights are on, when they're off, when he's telling the truth, when he's not, whether he's on stage, whether he's off stage. I know that's a lot to say, but I'm basing that on his conduct in office.
And now challenging him for the party's nomination in 2020, former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld. Thanks so much for joining us.
So, a little bit about Bill Weld. Apparently, like I said, Republican who really sounds like a freaking Democrat right now. But pretty much he is going to run against Trump in the 2020 election, which I'm surprised the GOP is allowing anybody to turn around and run against President Cheeto. But apparently in this case, the guy's being allowed to do it. But either way, it's a story developing because, like I said, that is subject to change because Trump at this point is basically trying to rouse up his carrier base again and might turn to his racist, bigots, and xenophobe crowd to try to keep him in. So stay tuned. Aside from that, as we're going in, like I said, speaking about William Barr is now deciding that he's going to investigate the investigators. Did we call it? Yes. Did we call the reason why? Because Trump basically told him to.
Attorney General William Barr is now asking for a new investigation of the investigation, the third review of its kind. ABC's Mary Bruce joins us from Capitol Hill with the latest on that. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, George. Well, the Attorney General is now moving ahead with this investigation of the Russia investigation. He's now tapped John Durham, a U.S. attorney in Connecticut, to lead this probe into the origins of the Russia investigation. And we're told he's actually already been working on this now for several weeks. This comes, of course, after the Attorney General told lawmakers here last month that he did believe that the U.S. government spied on the Trump campaign during the 2016 election. Though Bill Barr said he'd seen no direct evidence of wrongdoing, he said it was something he wanted to look into. That, of course, angered many Democrats who felt that the Attorney General was simply doing the president's bidding. And then the FBI director last week here defended the agency's actions, and he refused to say that their surveillance amounted to spying, George.
Of course, this is an Inspector General investigation and the investigation by another U.S. attorney. Meantime, Mary, it turns out that Don Jr., the president's son, is going to continue to resist that bipartisan call for testimony to the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Yeah, and George, he's been subpoenaed, of course, by the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee. The question then is, if Don Jr. does not comply, well, what comes next? Do Republicans here move to hold him in contempt and have a full vote on the Senate floor, or do they essentially give the president's son a pass? Either way, George, it puts Republicans here on Capitol Hill in a very tricky position.
Yes, a very tricky position indeed, because, well, aside from, President Cheeto's son, who might as well be in jail with him, of course, with subpoenas, it's just hard to do anything because the only thing you can do is hold him in contempt, which they really should have done anyway, since the fact of the matter is they requested him to come in, and he's pretty much giving the finger. Not really surprised about William Barr because, like I said, William Barr was pushed in to be the Attorney General after Jeff Sessions during the Mueller investigation. He was ramrodded in, and when the Mueller investigation was finally wrapped up, the man spent 48 hours giving out a 20-page summary over a 400-page document saying that he couldn't find anything to implicate Trump on obstruction of justice, whereas the redacted report that he put out, the Barr report, says otherwise. So I'm not really surprised, because Trump has sat there and said it since he's been in office, because he said the black man, meaning President Obama, had him on wiretaps during the last year of his presidency. He has also sat there and said that during his administration, he has been surveilled, he has been under surveillance and constant monitoring by the FBI. And so now his newly adapted Attorney General wants to open an investigation into the investigators. Honestly, if this was a Hollywood script, it was written by Michael Bay, because all it's missing is explosions right now. Simple fact of the matter is, William Barr is a plant. He is there to dismay, disproduce, change the narrative, and then go from there. Even got to the point to where Trump had pretty much given the man the ability to declassify information, which means that anything that he now has held sacred, he can release. So I'm like, okay, because if I was a Democrat and I heard that, the first thing I'll go to Barr is, well, I heard President Cheeto finally let you off the leash. When can we have the full Mueller report? And that's the thing about it. Democrats, if I implore you, if any of y'all do watch, I'm not surprised if you do, but if you do, that'd be cool. And Republicans, it'd be cool for you too. But it's high time the Attorney General spits out the Mueller report. And it's like, because the only people that have seen it, aside from the White House, is basically his group, the Department of Justice. It needs to be released. It needs to be released. Even with the Barr report, that crappy redaction he put out still implicates Trump in multiple obstructions of justices. So it makes no sense that now William Barr has kind of been, given the green light. He should be able to go ahead and pretty much tell folks, here's the report. Here's what you wanted, so let me give it to you. That's the way it honestly should be. So time will tell on that. But then again, I'm not surprised about Donald Trump Jr. because he basically acts like his old man who thinks he's above the law and pretty much doesn't understand the law, but knows just enough to get past the bankruptcy. That's pretty much his entire family. But again, I always say follow the money when it comes to Trump, because he's a big-ass con man. And speaking of con men, and another reason why this is a conflict of interest is basically the next story, which video-wise I won't play because it's pretty much him standing with Saudi Arabia over the murder of American U.S. journalist Jamal Khashoggi, which, again, it's a sanctioned murder. It's a sanctioned murder by the Saudi family, mainly the prince, because Khashoggi spoke out against Saudi Arabia and the family's hold in the country. So, aside from that, what happened yesterday? Trump decided to sell $8 billion worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And he bypassed Congress's approval, citing his beef with Iran as an urgent threat. So again, when it comes to actually purchasing weapons, when it comes to actually selling things to other countries, it does require congressional approval. Except for that little wartime act that Trump is going to try to use, to where he doesn't need approval to do it, and that he's just going to go ahead and pretty much say, fuck you guys, I'm going to make sure my bosses are taken care of. His bosses being the Saudi family. Why? Because the Saudi families, and a lot of people don't understand this, Trump's money comes from overseas. I mean, in the U.S., he's basically broke. But overseas, the Saudi family funds him, Russia funds him, Deutsche Bank used to fund him, and I'm not surprised the World Bank still funds him. Why? because they know they have a compromised president who will basically do anything they want for them. Here in this case, the Saudis, which are basically between Iraq, which Iran is really between Iraq and Saudi Arabia, and trust me, you don't want to be in that cookie. But aside from that, at this point, Saudis know that they have a president on speed dial that can do anything they want for them. And now, $8 billion of weapons may be well on its way to Saudi Arabia to help them fight Iran because of nuclear talks deals going down, and that the U.S. was citing that Iran is literally making attacks on certain tankers out there because, again, it's about that oil. Let's just be real. It's about that oil. So, again, this story and the next story, you will see a common narrative where I always sit there and say follow the money. Because aside from basically sending money and weapons to Saudis, he's doing this.
Presence in the Middle East by hundreds of troops, and it blamed Iran for recent attacks there. The deployment will include additional fighter jets and Patriot missile batteries. More now from David Martin.
The attacks of the past weeks have been scattered and sporadic. Holes blown in tankers at anchor outside the Persian Gulf, drone strikes on Saudi oil facilities, and most recently, a rocket fired into the green zone in Baghdad where the U.S. Embassy is located. But today, a senior military officer said they were all part of a campaign orchestrated by the government of Iran.
We believe with a high degree of confidence that this stems back to the leadership of Iran at the highest levels, and that all of the attacks that I mentioned have been attributed to Iran.
Intelligence that Iran's leaders were preparing these and other attacks prompted the U.S. to send B-52 bombers and an aircraft carrier as a warning. Today, the Pentagon followed up with 900 additional troops to beef up defenses, both in the air and on the ground, at bases in the Persian Gulf. President Trump seems confident Iran got the message.
I don't think Iran wants to fight, and I certainly don't think they want to fight with us.
Iran does appear to have backed off threats to attack American forces directly. In recent days, several U.S. warships have transited without incident through the Strait of Hormuz, even though Iran has threatened to close the strait.
3 weeks to the day after the first intelligence warnings came in, the U.S. is muscled up and hunkered down for what promises to be a long-running confrontation with Iran. Major?
So basically, World War III, the next war we're going to be in. And honestly, it's like, I am so tired of fucking war. We are not a war country. Matter of fact, in the entire existence of the U.S. nation, there's only been 16 years of peace where there wasn't a war. Every other time, there seemed to be a war. And now, it seems to be another war we just simply find ourselves into. Especially with Iran, because, again, we had a somewhat, and I say somewhat under President Obama, we had a somewhat peaceful deal under Iran with the nuclear deal, as they were able to operate under strict regulation guidelines, but they weren't being prevented from doing what they wanted to do, as far as basically trying to develop their own nuclear program, as if we know any better. But again, since Trump's basically pulled out of the deal, Iran's pulled out of the deal, and as you can see from the map, they're not too far off from Trump's people, because, you know, we're still in Iraq 20 plus years later. But not surprised, the simple fact of the matter is just that it all goes back. I always say it best, follow the money. I mean, Trump has now given money, weapons, and now has sent troops. Troops, mind you. Troops have been sent or will be sent to basically, I won't say the new Iraq, but it's pretty much becoming the simple fact of the matter is we have always been invading the Middle East. We have always been doing that. I don't know why we do it. It's simply put that we've lost people, we've lost, just to protect resources, but really when it comes down to it, we're protecting oil. So I'm not really surprised that the Saudi family, which pretty much sits on one of the biggest oil deposits in the world, would sit there and still ask their, purchased asset, President Cheeto, to basically protect them. So again, we really shouldn't be surprised by that, but if I feel for those guys who are in the armed forces right now, because this seems like another war that's just about to happen. But aside from that, some other good news have actually happened, especially in the sense of abortion. I've talked about it. Like I've always said before, I've been pro-choice. I've always sat there and said a woman's body is her own motherfucking business. You can argue, it's amazing, not to go too much off that, not to go off rant, but it is amazing to me that when I simply say this simple concept on the subject of abortion, how many people will bypass it. Because I've said it best, and I'm a simple man. I'm not complicated. I'm simple. I like simple. I like the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. I like the KISS method because there's no frills, just straight, just exactly what it is. So when I sit there and say, when it comes to abortion, I believe pro-choice. I believe that if a woman could do whatever the fuck she wants to do with her body, because the choices, actions, and consequences, are hers and hers alone. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. And it amazes me so that when I sit there and say that, it immediately gets bypassed because they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear the fact of the matter is that people different from them will turn around and sit there and say, well, what about this, that, and the other? And if you're against abortions, don't have them. If you want children, by all means, whether you adopt or have them naturally, go for it. But you cannot hate on others who are different than you, nor should you force them to your way of will by creating a law that prevents them from from exercising the same right that you have yourself about your body. And if you can't understand that, then honestly, it's going to be a little hard for me to have a conversation with you, personally. Because you can go back and forth, but the fact of the matter is, a woman's body is her own. Just in the same sense, and not to get too sexual about it, because if a man decides that, hey, I'm just going to jerk off everywhere, and sperm contains DNA, which is the essence of life, he is basically wasting life. Don't see nobody telling the guy to stop whacking off. Why are you worried about a woman, what she does with her body? Anywho, that short rant about that. So anyway, going forward about that, like I said, good news because from the great state of Mississippi, I believe. I think it's Mississippi. I hope so I'm right. Oh, it is Mississippi. Okay, cool. Let me play it.
Mississippi's new ban on abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. It was that law to take effect July 1st. Meanwhile, the governor of Missouri today signed a new law banning abortions after 8 weeks. It allows exceptions for medical emergencies, but not in cases of rape or incest. Doctors who break that law could face up to 15 years in prison. So far, 15 states have enacted abortion bans or restrictions this year.
Okay, so again, it is great that they're blocking it, but let me tell you why these laws are bullshit. These laws are bullshit because this is setting up for the grand plan to overturn Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court. Now, every state could put in whatever law they want. The problem is, it's always going to wind up in court, and it's always going to go up against Roe v. Wade. That is never going to change. What Republicans and some of those people in the pro-life agenda are hoping that enough of these laws get put in to where it does go to the Supreme Court, which is conservative leaning, and will try to overturn Roe v. Wade. I personally believe that it's not going to happen, and that really this is just a big ass smokescreen to get people behind because, like I said, it's a simple fact of the matter. It's just that folks don't know, as far as, sorry guys, I don't know why my dog just barked. I guess he must have found something he didn't like. But anyway, but when it comes down to it, it's them just simply not agreeing with what a woman wants to do. And that's fine. You can disagree with what a woman wants to do, but you can't take away from the fact that it's still her choice. And honestly, that's the best way to put it. Her choice, her rules. You can abide by it or don't, but you certainly can't force her to do your will, because then that would be doing exactly the opposite of what you don't want to happen to you. But moving right along, for all those that don't know about the tariffs, and I sat there and said this 3 podcasts, and I'm still saying it now, is anybody feeling like they're winning yet? Because China's not done with us, and I'll tell you why.
Trade war between the United States and China. Last Friday, President Trump raised tariffs to 25% on nearly 6,000 categories of products from China. Tonight, 3 correspondents look at this from different perspectives in the U.S. and in China.
This is Ramy Inocencio in Beijing, where the escalating trade tensions are spilling over into state media. From commentary on TV vowing to fight, to propaganda on social media taunting the U.S. to bring it on. The message is clear. Beijing is ready to push back, and China's citizens are picking it up.
Do you think Beijing should push back against Washington, D.C.?
As President Xi and Chairman Mao said, you can't have lasting peace without war. We feel America is a bully.
All of this a reaction to the increased tariffs on $200 billion in goods the Chinese ship to the U.S. Victor Gao is an expert on international relations in Beijing.
To what degree can Washington, D.C. hold down Beijing?
No one in the world can really launch a trade war against China and win that trade war.
A reminder, there will be pain on both sides.
I'm Dean Reynolds in Elkhart, Indiana.
Does the president understand tariffs?
I'm thinking he does.
Businessman Tom Irons says the pain from tariffs is getting worse by the day.
President Trump, we support him, but this idea of tariffs being paid by the Chinese government is something that I don't quite understand.
Irons' firm, ASA Electronics, manufactures systems for pleasure boats, RVs, and commercial vehicles. 110 workers here assemble the parts made by 2,000 contract employees in China. It's a $100 million business. If the president makes good on his threat to further expand tariffs on Chinese imports, the price of one of Irons' premium systems could increase by $1,000, and the people who will pay are his customers. The trade war has created something businessmen just hate.
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
I'm Jonathan Migliotti in Southern California, where that uncertainty is also threatening common household products, like those at Spears TV, family-owned for nearly 3 generations.
I walk into your shop and I say, show me your U.S.-made televisions. Which ones would you show me?
You gotta have to go back 20 years or 30 years. There is no more U.S.-made TVs anymore.
Alan Harikian runs his sales and repair shop with his father.
So these tariffs could hit your bottom line here.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
In fact, the tariff on all Chinese goods could cost the average family of 4 up to $2,300 a year. Those higher costs could mean a shift in how Harikian does business.
Well, you have to try to do other things, I guess. Try, installation, labor-wise. Maybe repairs are going to go up because people are going to not buy a new TV because the price is higher, so they might end up repairing it instead of buying it.
And whether the impact of the tariff is felt in Beijing, Elkhart, Indiana, or here, experts we spoke with say in an escalating trade war, everyone loses. John?
Jonathan Bigley.
And yep, and he's not wrong. In a trade war, everybody does lose in a trade war, but as China has pointed out, they don't. And I've said it before. Here's the thing about trade. As I say, here's the thing about tariffs, I'll repeat this again. You cannot go up against production-friendly companies like China and think you're going to win. China basically corners the production market on assembly and manufacturing, especially of products, because the simple fact of the matter is they control the material and they control the employees, which also means that they can set the wages whatever they want. So you could put tariffs on them regardless, and they can hit you back twice as hard, but they'll be fine because you're not affecting their production and manufacturing. That's what a lot of people don't understand about China. So, Trump saying going against China is basically a losing battle because eventually those tariffs are going to have to be lifted because the only people they're going to hurt is people on the other side, in which those that actually do get their products, which a lot of people do, get their products from China, but now about to come with price hikes. So again, say what you want about China, aside from the fact that we still owe them money from 2 wars. They literally got Trump by the balls, and Trump is trying to sit there and say he's winning when he obviously doesn't understand how tariffs work and still don't. So we got to ride that one out. But anyway, our last story before we get to our good news is basically about Julian Assange and basically where he's at right now.
In our world lead, the Justice Department announcing more charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Let's get right to CNN's Laura Jarrett at the Justice Department. Laura, what are the details of this indictment?
Well, Jake, this is a pretty aggressive new move by the Justice Department, essentially tacking on 17 new charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. We had seen a single charge of computer intrusion late last month, but now 17 new charges, much more significant, and really a big deal here for First Amendment advocates, and a concern here because he's being charged with unlawfully obtaining, soliciting, encouraging that former intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning with obtaining just a bevy of national defense materials, and he's being charged with publishing those materials. And so the Justice Department asked today, well, what's the difference between Julian Assange and journalists like you and I? And they said, let's be clear, Julian Assange is no journalist. Another justice official said he's not being charged simply because he's a publisher. And what they're pointing to is not only the fact that Assange allegedly helped Manning crack into a Department of Defense password, but also the fact that he published confidential human sources, the names of human sources, which put them in danger, and he knew that publishing would put them in danger. He solicited those materials on WikiLeaks, and that's what they're pointing to, which makes this case different, Jake.
And Laura, what does this mean for Assange, and has WikiLeaks responded?
They have said this is madness. It's the end of national security journalism and the First Amendment. So obviously a pretty aggressive response from WikiLeaks there. But, you know, this is something that the prior administration really struggled with. Under the same set of facts, under the prior Justice Department, Eric Holder declined to prosecute Julian Assange under the Espionage for just this idea, because the idea is, well, what would separate this from the New York Times publishing classified information? And I should also point out, you might wonder why we're seeing this today. The Justice Department actually had 60 days from when he was arrested last month. And so there was a sort of window from when they could tack on these new charges. No telling whether they're going to tack on any additional charges, though, at this point, Jake.
So pretty much from that simple fact, like I said, Julian Assange, former person that started WikiLeaks, is now getting 17 counts of espionage and almost basically considered a traitor. Now, here's what I said about this, because a lot of people see him really as an activist. He was an activist at first. I've got nothing against activists as far as them having, wanting to let them know and be whistleblowers and whatnot. The problem is that he went into systems that he shouldn't have and hacked places he shouldn't have, and that's the reason why he's getting tagged for it. And at the same time, he's admitting to willfully doing it. So I really have no love lost for the man, except the simple fact of the matter is that there's a difference between wanting to be an activist and there's going too far. And unfortunately, in his case, he just went too far. As right now, the U.S. is hoping to extradite him here to be tried, but he's still going to the world courts and all that crap. So it might be a while before he gets here, but at the same time, I just really can't find love. I can't really find sympathy for a man who was willing to, as they say, put out information that can be harmful to others and in critical areas without actually giving due diligence and actually doing it the proper way. So don't feel bad for the guy. But anyway, we're actually coming to our last segment, our good news segment, because I always said it best. We do talk a lot about doom and gloom stuff here on how the Frack We Got Here, but also we do want to, leave some good stories out there about kindness and whatnot, because to make us feel like there's still some humanity left in the world, as it should be. So these two I found, which I thought was interesting, is like, the simple fact of the matter is that how acts of kindness can honestly have an impact on people's lives. And you can tell by stories like this.
Pays tribute to a hero in tonight's On the Road.
You can see why someone might hate being a school bus driver. The early hours, when the weather sours, the abundance of responsibility combined with the absence of eyes in the back of your head.
Y'all have a good day.
Nevertheless, Curtis Jenkins loves delivering these little ones to Lake Highlands Elementary in Dallas, Texas.
Yes.
Emily Grunninger is the principal.
He goes way beyond the outlined responsibilities and duties of a bus driver. I mean, that bus is like a family.
These are my children. These are my community. I love them all.
To establish community,
what's your job, man?
He starts by giving everyone responsibility.
This is one of the police officers.
It's an elaborate flowchart.
She's the administrative assistant to the president.
Administrative assistant to the president.
Yeah.
Everyone working together to build a yellow bus utopia.
And we're going to care about each other, and we're going to love everybody, right? I put time, effort, love, and care understanding each and every one of those kids.
Omar.
To show his love and understanding,
Hey, Chief.
Curtis gives presents throughout the year.
You say you like baseball.
Each gift personally selected with that child in mind. He gave this girl a t-shirt.
Her first book.
With a picture from a book she made.
I'm hoping this t-shirt inspire her to keep on writing books.
Over the years, he has bought these kids bikes, backpacks, handed out cards on birthdays, and even turkeys at Thanksgiving. He has spent thousands out of his own pocket. And yet, if you ask the kids what they like most about Curtis, the gifts don't even come up.
He really cares about us, is really kind, and he helps anyone in need.
Ethan Engel is a 5th grader.
It means a lot to you.
Yeah.
He says the bus ride is often the best part of his day.
My mom got divorced when I was only 4.
See you tomorrow.
He's the father that I always wanted. In some ways, I wish my dad could have been like that.
We make the mistake sometimes of thinking certain jobs are more important than others.
I know.
But Curtis Jenkins made his job important.
Bye-bye.
And in doing so, even created his own salary.
Bye-bye. That's the paycheck right there. If I can get that, you can keep the money.
Steve Hartman, on the road.
And honestly, you got love stories like that. I mean, you can sit there and say it best. I don't care what position in life you have in. If you could have a positive impact, especially on children, whether you're a bus driver or not, that's cool. I mean, that's me when I saw that story, I was like, aside from, having allergies, because, you start thinking about all the people in your life that have positive impact on you. And that's honestly the way it should be. That community building of that individual that honestly just puts time and love and compassion into people, and you can tell it shows in this man's case. So kudos to that guy. So the last story I have about the good story is it's been in the news, but I still love this, and I keep hoping to God that I'm not saying that as I said with me, I'm 7 classes away from finishing my master's. So, and trust me. And you know what? Let me stop myself before I say this. For all those that are going for the doctorate, go for it. Not going to knock you for it. Earn that PhD, earn that doctorate if that's what you want. But for me, this master's, I'm done. That is the end of the road of education for me. If master's doesn't get me to where I want to go, then maybe it's time to go pick up that life as a welder and a plumber and really invest in auto mechanic school at that point, because those are my hobbies. But this master's course, as far as this master's track, your boy's done. But anyway, aside from that, like I said, not disencouraging those that don't want to go higher. If going higher is what you want to be, by all means, go for it. Excel, be the best that you want to be. I will not knock you for that. That being said, I love the fact of when people give back, because I always sit there and say to myself, if I ever get up in life to where I can turn around and sit there and be able to give back and do things for individuals, I would do that. So in this case, this individual here, which has probably been played a lot, but I still love playing the story because I think it's pretty cool.
The 19th class of Morehouse College would have left campus today with around $40 million in student debt until this happened.
This is my class, 2019. And my family is making a grant to eliminate their student loans.
Wow. So that speaker, Robert F. Smith, went on to encourage the 300 graduates of Morehouse to pay it forward. Smith is the founder of Vista Equity Partners, and Forbes estimates he is worth about $5 billion. He received an honorary doctorate at this ceremony.
A woman vanished.
Okay, sorry about that. Apparently CNN is faster than me today. So yeah, Morehouse College, 2 class 2019, just got a hellified gift. And I can't knock him for it. A billionaire who's actually going to be paying off the classes, which is an estimated $40 million. So that's right, Sally Mae. That is $40 million your asses will not get from these students over the course of their lives. And if I feel like I got some type of way about that, because honestly, I can go into a whole nother rant about how student loans are basically setting up debt for college graduates, for not allowing them to basically be able to buy houses and whatnot. I can go into that, but I'm not going to really do that right now. We're going to celebrate this good news. The simple fact of the matter is that this man who is a billionaire has decided that him and his family are going to pay out $40 million. Let me tell you something. As a college student, I cannot fucking sit there and tell you the level of relief if someone had sat there and said, you know what, Will, we're going to pay off your student loans so you're going to be graduating with no debt. Could you imagine being told that you have no debt, here's your degree, and you're going to be sitting there like, woo! You might be pulling a Steve Harvey. Won't he do it? You might be pulling off one of those. I'm just saying. But again, feel good story because, like I said, nothing makes you more relaxed than getting your degree and not having to worry about those Sally Mae or Fed loans or Nave calls, because trust me, them sons of bitches are relentless. But anyway, just thought it was cool to share. And at the same time, this does fit into the point that, for the simple fact of the matter is, there are those individuals out there, if you have the ability to impact a person's life, because like I said, let me ever get my world domination on and let me be a multi-billionaire. You don't think I will go around blessing folks? Shit, I will do it just to piss off Sally Mae. Just to turn around and sit there and say, oh, we're going to get so much interest off these students. Here's this check. Fuck you, Will. Fuck you too, Sally Mae. I got these kids' ass. That just be me. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and end it here for the end of this podcast. So thank you all guys for watching. Thank you all guys for peeking your heads in. I did see the viewer go up and down, and I appreciate that. So do want to go ahead and get this off my chest before we do wrap this up. I'm not the only guy with podcast out here. So aside from my How the Frack We Got Here, a little bit later, I will have my Off-Limits podcast, and which is definitely, like I said, we talk about the subjects, the uncomfortable subjects that people may not want to talk, but the only way to make something comfortable is to basically talk about it being uncomfortable, which will be a little bit later, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. today. My other compadre, Thomas, we call him the Mountain Puncher, will have his To Be Determined podcast at 3 p.m. today. What is To Be Determined? To Be Determined is basically a fitness podcast in which, if I can show you the pictures of what this fucker looked like before, then, and after, he is definitely a gym junkie. All he does is eat, sleep, and breathe gym. But he loves to help out people as well, so let's talk about what makes for him, his nutrition, also his personal testimony. But that's going to be later today at 3 p.m. Oh, hey, Sean. My bad, Sean. I didn't see what you said. I apologize, but thank you for watching. Aside from that, my other two friends at the table of bosses, Vaughn, who's probably watching this right now. I think he is. What's up, Vaughn? So Vaughn has some podcasts of his own. He actually has the I Get That Reference VST, which is a podcast that goes over various music and videos, things of that nature, things you might find informative, highly interactive show. He also has Rhythmness, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, in which he goes over music videos. He goes over musical albums and gives it to a 4-tier rating system. If you want to know what the 4-tier rating system is, had to watch Rhythmness to find out. He also has Random as Fuck with Uncle VZ. What is Random as Fuck? Random as Fuck is the pool of ratchetness we sometimes dip our pinky toe into to give us a break from life and have a chuckle. So sometimes they're funny videos, sometimes they're out there videos, sometimes they're videos of the old man still thinking he can rap. I will never get that out of my head, Vaughn. I apologize. But all these, if you look up Big Vaughn, if you look up Amar Witherspoon on Facebook, you will be able to actually see the calendar of which all of his videos or all his podcasts will be playing. And also my other friend, DJ King Anyway, Trace Brown on Facebook, has a couple podcasts of his own. He actually has the Bump Down, which I'm surprised he's not in my group right now singing Bump Down, Bump Down, Bump Down. But the Bump Down is a musical podcast where it's, I feel like I'm going to be jinxed already because I need to look at this again. It's kind of a little early on my side. Music, knowledge, charts, and numbers. I'm pretty sure I fucked that up, but I'll have to go look at it again. I promise, Trace, I'll get that right. But anyway, it's a musical podcast in which he goes over what's on the hots on the charts, what's on the mainstream and the underground, and pretty much up and coming artists, and as well as him and Vaughn having conversations are always fun to watch. He also has a Smoke with Truth, who, as I like to call, the in-your-face, no-frills, check your ego at the door podcast, because he will go to subjects, and he might not say things that you like or necessarily agree with, but there are things that need to be said because they're coming from the truest point of life. So again, the Smoke of Truth and the Bump Down, which he has. And also, yes, I haven't forgot about GetBit. We actually will do it this Sunday. Because I am going to talk about a little bit about how to build a computer. Because I see a lot of people, because the thing about it is, it is so much easier to build your computer versus actually buying it. And I want to talk about the ways that you can do it, as well as talk about the state of video games as we're coming up on E3, and also just other things, like I said, with GetBit, because it's really a self-help show for the IT world. But we do delve into video games a little bit later and a little bit of things after that. But that won't be until Sunday at 8 p.m. And also Pick Up the Sticks. We haven't forgot about that. It's just getting our timing down enough to where we can all do that, because Pick Up the Sticks is our roundabout video game podcast in which we talk about up and coming games, and we try to honestly give honest opinions about it, because like I said, we're all gamers at heart. So aside from that, we also do have YouTube pages. So if you look up Big BZA Dot, if you look up DJ King Eddie Wayne, if you look up How the Frack We Got Here, if you look up Ultimate's podcast, all of those are YouTube pages in which you'll be able to like, share, and subscribe and see every video we have up to date. Also, our I Get That reference page, you can sit there and join that. That'll eventually become our Table of Bosses video vault, to where you'll be able to see every podcast that we've done so far. Aside from that, that's really all that I have. Like I always say about How the Frack We Got Here. How the Frack We Got Here is about staying informed. How do we stay informed? You're not taking everything at face value or things that you've been shown. You just want to sit there and hang on one second, Sean. Let me get this out of the way. So about staying informed is just that you always want to be able to not take everything at face value. You actually want to get in there, do the research, really find the actual truth, and bring about to others what you found in hopes of inspiring them, because an informed community can make a whole lot better decisions than an uninformed community, because an uninformed community got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. And Sean, I just sent you a hot off the press track. If you like to play it, be the first one to debut it. Oh, Sean, let me tell you what. For me, I'm not the musical guy. Like I said, if you look up Vaughn, A71 Weatherspoon on Facebook, or DJ King Eddie Wayne, to let them know, because Vaughn actually has a segment on his crap. If I can say the words, that'd be great. He actually has a spot on his Rhythm Nest where it's called "Step Into the Ring." So if you look up A71 Weatherspoon, or go to our Facebook group, I Get That reference, you can sing your track to him, and he'll be able to play on his podcast and give you his honest opinion. You can also look up DJ King Eddie Wayne on Facebook or on YouTube, and you can sing your track to him, and then they'll also be able to play it, because trust me, you're going to want them to play a lot better than this pendejo. I'm just going to be honest with you. So, with that being said, guys, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for watching the replay. You Trump supporters, I definitely know y'all will. But see from that, guys, enjoy Memorial Day. Hopefully you guys be safe. Definitely be aware. Have some good food. And aside from that, let's get through next week. Peace.